You actually clicked on this. Okay, fair warning. This one gets really dark and unsettling. DM is a male coworker, and I'm male as well. The other two in the group were female friends of the DM. We all met up and had characters at the ready, based on the DM's guidance that all three of us would start off in a village and be youths, 15 years old, training together. We all expected a time jump and that this was just going to be an intro to the world session. We were so very wrong. He had meticulously written out detailed family histories and had several pages of lore. He had even drawn family crests, as well as family roles within the village established. So when the Bugbear raid started after 3 days of getting to know our friends and families, and our characters not really having any potent abilities, seeing as we were level 1, we just kind of assumed the village would be able to defend itself while we took on a few bugbears that made it over the wall. We were so very wrong. So we kill a few bugbears, and we're all having a good time. It's about 2 hours into the session, and things are going well. The DM lets us describe our attacks. We're talking in character, and even though we feel weak, we're having a good time. Then the village walls begin to fail, and bugbears spill into the village. Hundreds of them. The DM has an NPC escort us to a nearby basement to hide, and we take actions to blockade the entrance and seclude ourselves inside. This is your last warning to jump off this train. The DM then goes on to describe the horrors of the Bugbear raid in vivid detail. It started with just, "You hear screams," and turned into, "You hear your childhood friend scream, but then the screams are garbled and wet," which then turns into, "You hear the grunts and growls of the bugbear's pleasure, mixed with the screams of your parents and the other villagers." At this point, I notice the two women are looking very uncomfortable. I try to signal the DM to calm it down with a stern look and some subtle hand motions. He's grinning and wide-eyed. He goes on to describe in vivid details how hours of this non-consensual bugbear situation would sound, while the women look increasingly more uncomfortable with each excruciatingly painful minute that passes. So after about 20 minutes of the DM describing the sound of things, we get back to our horrifically scarred characters. The bugbears have moved on, and we survived. We slowly and cautiously venture out of the basement to find our destroyed village and the mutilated corpses of our families and friends. Everyone is dead. They've all been what I will politely describe as dead by snoo snoo in the face. Everyone's jaw is broken, and everyone has big gaping eye holes and glistening faces. It is described that the dead bodies lack any form of cuts or bruising, thus implying that they were... Oh wait, the DM just comes out and says it. "The bugbears killed them when they abused their eye holes during their invasion." "What about the other kids in our group?" one of the women asks. "The same happened to them," is his reply. We players are all incredibly uncomfortable. None of us are eating the snacks. I feel sick seeing the look on the women's faces, and that I'm even a part of this. We keep trudging on though, and we decide to bury the bodies. The DM then tells us to make an athletics check in order to see if we can keep hold of the bodies due to the fact that the bodies were covered in a slippery substance. It was at this time that I decided I couldn't take it anymore and ended the session immediately. I didn't mince words and called him sick in the head, and that this had to be one of the most uncomfortable moments of my life, and the worst D&D experience I had ever had. The women looked so disgusted and uncomfortable. He was proud of the session though. He took it as a massive compliment about his ability as a storyteller to make us so uncomfortable and to discuss us. He then said,
"I have even better things planned for your characters, and I can't wait for our next session."
The next session was never going to happen. Working with this guy was horribly awkward afterwards. He constantly wanted to get a session together every weekend for about 2 months, but none of us were ever available to play. I tried explaining to him why none of us wanted to continue, but he always took it as a compliment of his storytelling abilities. He eventually gave up and blamed us for being too busy to continue his amazing story. Thankfully, I got laid off about 4 months after the session, and I blocked him from contacting me on every platform possible. Okay, I read a lot of horror stories, but this one seems to be a little more messed up than usual. It's one thing to have a village situation, like in the Sinister Six story, but the fact that this, I'll say, life form, was saying everything with a bright smile on his face and being so proud of the atrocities spoken takes it a step further. It kind of reminds me of the sleazy guy from Final Fantasy VII, where you insult him and he takes it as a compliment and asks for more. I can understand what he's trying to go for, which was shock value. I mean, this sounds slightly similar to what happened in the beginning of Attack on Titan, but combining the violence with inappropriateness, and no one wants to hear all that. Overall, have a session 0, folks. For those of you left, what do you all think about this situation?